Welcome into a new Buff Stampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com. Again, joined by our football analyst, William Gardner. And we're going to break down this offense, which they lose a lot of notable guys. But, man, there's a lot of talent to talk about in this show, huh?
Yeah, so it's exciting to go into spring. Again, I think with a lot of talent and see what we see in 15 spring practices and then see where they go from there after that.
You want to jump right in? Do you have any thoughts on anything else that's happened in Boulder? It sounds like Warren Sapp is going to continue to be kind of that outlier with the defensive line group. They're going to hire a full-time defensive line coach. Neely says that it's going to be a hire that folks are going to be excited about. So we'll see there.
Yeah, I think that sort of fits what we've talked about before. That would be the expectation to me. It worked really well last time, and I'm not sure that I think Sapp has some other things going on and maybe not ready to be a full-time position coach, so to speak. But I think the way they had it set up last year worked really well for both the edge and the defensive tackle position. So no reason not to try it again.
Today's episode is brought to us by Macaulay Capital Fractional CFO Services. Is your business looking for financial guidance and support but not yet big enough to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have a solution for you. Hiring a fractional CFO who can work with your business on a part-time basis. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. And here's the best part. It's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with us. For more information or to set up a meeting, please visit MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com. We'll get into the defense in our next show. For this show, we're focusing in on the offense in terms of what we expect to see this spring ball. Let's start with quarterbacks. This is the hot button topic that will continue. First off, William, let's start here. I don't think that they're going to name a starting quarterback this spring. I think that's going to go into the fall.
Well, I mean, unless somebody just steps up and it's so dramatically better than anybody else, but I don't think that might necessarily be the case. So, I think they give a lot of reps to a lot of guys, and we'll see what develops with it.
So Caden Salter comes in from Liberty, won a ton of football games, really successful program there. Ryan Staub showed us something in that Utah game. Really didn't have meaningful snaps in that 2024 season, which was a good thing for the Buffaloes as they got to 9 wins. Not against Ryan Staub, but just the fact that Shedeur Sanders was able to finish out the season. And then you've got, of course, Juju Lewis. You tried the Juju Precision Pass Burger. I did as well. You did better. You ate more of that burger than I did. Where does your loyalty lie as we go into spring ball?
I don't have loyal. I try to look at it, not have loyalty anywhere at any position. Quite frankly, it's let the best guy rise above and play. I think the obvious question that people are going to have, and the other guy that gets mentioned every now and then with people is Dominique Ponder, but
he's a really good walk-on quarterback. But we're not talking about him being a starter in 2025, are we?
Well, I don't know. We'll wait and see. I guess I just anybody could jump out there, and we weren't looking at Cash Cleveland being a starter either, but there it was. So you just never know. But I think the question, I think that the automatic assumption is going to be that we're going to be worse at quarterback, and from a talent perspective, that's probably true, right? I mean, in terms of are any of these guys going to be a first-round draft pick? I would guess probably not, but that doesn't mean that the quarterback play in a larger sense won't be as good or even better, depending on what the offense is set up to do. So it really comes down to Shermer, who is also the quarterback coach, putting together a a scheme and a play calling regimen that works for the talents of these particular guys. So you got different talents for each guy. So it's kind of hard to say who's going to win the whole thing until you see what the offense is going to be.
I wrote today when I was doing an update on Colorado's coaching staff of Pat Shurmur was the no-brain replacement when deep in that 2023 season, you knew Sean Lewis was not the guy. And he had that chemistry with Shedeur Sanders. And I think generally there were some off-putting moments in 2024, but I've always been a little bit more on the Shedeur Sanders side or on the Pat Shurmur side because I've seen Brian Lindgren get roasted by Colorado fans and go to Oregon State, have success. I thought Jay Johnson was a little bit underrated as an offense coordinator. It's like kind of this Madden generation that feels like they can call plays better than everybody. And I felt like on some level, Pat Shurmur's hands were not necessarily tied, but they were like directed towards what Shedeur Sanders wanted to do and what he could do well. And that by and large worked out well. Again, 9 wins. I'm so anxious to see what this offense looks like in 2025. This is going to be the Pat Shurmur season in terms of like real observations towards like what he can do with different quarterbacks at that QB1 spot, I feel like.
Well, I think you have a situation now this season. I mean, it was pretty obvious the last 2 years that the key talent on that offense was Shedeur and the wide receivers, especially Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn and those guys. So, it made a lot of sense to throw the ball a lot. Now, I think it would have been more effective for Shedeur if we had run the ball more, kept the defense a little more honest. But we got 9 wins out of it. We had a pretty effective offense. So that's the way it is. But now this year, you're going to really have to balance things out more because you can't put it on the shoulders of, I guess to some extent Salter maybe, but Ryan Staub, Caden Salter, Julian Lewis, they're not going to be that Shedeur type of guy who you can just put it all on their shoulders and go out there and make this thing happen. So he has to mix it up a little bit. He has to get the running game going. And then the other thing that's interesting to me out of the last few weeks, and I think we'll get to this when we get to the next position, but Coach Prime talking about what a great offensive mind Marshall Faulk is. So it'd be interesting to see how these two guys work together to try to develop that. As I said in our last podcast, you're not bringing in Marshall Faulk to hand off 7 times a game.
I guess my question there would be with Pat Shurmur directing this offense. Let's say it's Caden Salter, run the RPO, heavy RPO with Isaiah Augusta, or even if it's Julian Lewis running this offense. Can this offense score as many points as they did in 2024? I think they can.
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. And I think they'll do it in different ways. Again, I don't think that any one of these quarterbacks is going to show the same arm talent and pocket presence or whatever as a Shedeur Sanders, but I do think that this offense has just as much, probably even more potential as a scoring offense than last year because I think we got a little one-dimensional, and I think we can't afford to be one-dimensional this year. So when you look at these 3 quarterbacks, part of the question has to be they got to decide what the offense is before they go out for spring ball. They can't have 3 different offenses for 3 different guys, right? And so you either have to fit what we're doing or you don't, I think.
Well, you can have wrinkles in there for different quarterbacks, right? Like you have to, again, going back to Robert Livingston's whole mantra of what made that defense successful last season was let's figure out what these guys do well. There was a time where we didn't see 11 personnel or 12 personnel really well, very much. And then they go out to, was it Central Florida, and they did that and it worked out really well. So you got to be able to maneuver on the move depending on your personnel. And I think that's got to be kind of the more the common theme.
Yeah, but you can't have an offense that tries to do everything, or else you're going to do everything poorly. I mean, there has to be some limit
No,
to
but
it.
yeah, yeah, different players can do different things though, right? So you like tweak the game plan based on whoever's behind center.
Right, for the game plan, but then you're talking 15 practices at this point. You're trying to get the most out of those 15 practices, so you want to ask all three of those quarterbacks to do certain things and see what they do well.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is all three of those scholarship quarterbacks will be on campus for spring ball, so you get a chance to see what they do well and don't do well, and then you've got a few months to kind of readjust things. Transitioning over to running back, Marshall Falk, as we talked about on our last show, is going to be the new running backs coach. Tommy Robinson is going to be the co-running backs coach, and that's a group that they decided not to add talent through the portal. And we love Isaiah Augusta. We love Micah Welch. And we're hopeful for Dallin Hayden. What else do you see out of that group?
Yeah, I mean the last thing I'd say about the quarterbacks is I think Caden Salter probably has a significant advantage in the to the extent that he's seen live bullets, a lot and had big college pass rush and what have you. Ryan Staub's seen that a little bit, and it's all going to be new for Julian Lewis. So it would be very interesting to see what they do with that. Looking at the running backs, I know a lot of people, some people on our board are just not discouraged, but disappointed that they didn't go pick up a running back. And some people still talk about, oh, Marshall Falk will bring in a guy. I think this is a damn good group of running backs. I don't think they were given the opportunity to show that last year, and I think they will be given that opportunity to show that this spring. I mean, Michael Welch was sort of the star of spring last year, so we'll see what kind of happens with these guys. But I think like with 11 and 12 personnel, getting a tight end, getting an H back, and things like that, you really and frankly, when they ran counter and trap and other kind of misdirection stuff, it worked. They just didn't run it very much. So I expect to see a lot more of that to help out the offensive line, give them better angles. But I think, and it's kind of funny. I'm looking at the eligibility chart. We've been talking about the four running backs, and the guy we haven't even mentioned is Charlie Offerdahl. So kind of interesting, I
My
guess,
bad.
to change
Yeah.
in a year. Well, no, I mean me too. I mean I did the same thing, but he went into last season, started out as a starter, and I think it's quite clear that he's got limitations. But I think that to me, the clear and obvious number one guy is Isaiah Augusta, and I saw enough of him to think that given enough carries and a good game plan, that he's easily 100-yard guy on most Saturdays. So he's got breakaway speed, he's got size, he sees holes very well, he's got good patience, and we'll just have to sort of see what happens in spring as far as what the offense is.
Yeah, we took a little flack from one of our previous shows when we were talking about Isaiah Augusta and his competition with the other backs about their speed. And everybody's like, Isaiah Augusta won that race. So I'm like, okay. We got to come back to that. Isaiah Augusta apparently is the fastest of those guys.
I don't know that Brandon Hood was involved in all that. I think he might be.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, he
He's
might be fast.
fast.
But I think people don't think about it because Isaiah Augusta is a pretty big kid, and I don't think people think of him as a speed running back, and he is. I mean, he was a track guy, and he's put up some pretty good times, I think, for his size. And I think he showed at least one time yet last year that he can run away from a defense, and I think we'll see more of that this year when he gets more opportunities. But he's also got really nice vision. He's a guy, I don't remember him having many runs for losses, so he gains yards, and I just thought that everything he did was very, very uh, uh, hopeful, positive.
Let's move on to the receivers, which are going to be coached by Jason Phillips once again. Who are your top four guys there?
Well, I think Omari and Miller's are going to be your top guy. I think Joseph Williams comes in to be sort of that uh, uh, um, uh, shepherd type of a receiver. Draylon Miller and Cameron Michael have both done things that make you think they could be that guy. So Terrell Timmons is kind of a forgotten guy, but he's another big wide receiver that
Yeah.
had some, and I
He's
think once
really
he,
taken on a leadership role this offseason too. Like you can tell it matters to him, which is a factor that sometimes we underlook.
yeah, and I think we talked about it last year. I mean, we talked about a lot of these guys last spring when we were talking about this, is that you get into that last season and all of a sudden there's an urgency that you didn't have before because this is your last shot to prove something. And with his height and speed and what he did before at North Carolina State, Terrell Timmons is a legitimate guy out there. And I think everybody thinks Omarion Miller is going to be the next really superstar wide receiver on the team. And then uh, I think we got four guys that I feel very comfortable about. Then we got some young guys that are going to be very interesting to watch, like Cameron Michael. And Michael's like, I think he's one of the fastest guys on the team and has some size to him as well. So, and then
He's
you
one of the
can't help
fastest guys in the country if he's healthy.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
in the country.
right, right, right. That sort of next level speed, I mean, that we didn't have up until this last year or the year before maybe. But so he's another guy that jumps out of there. And then the three guys coming in, all three of those guys could be one of the guys. I mean, Quentin Gibson, what he did against top competition in Texas is kind of crazy. And Adrian Wilson and Quinnell Farrakhan got a little more size to them, but any one of those three guys could very easily get into the mix. And I think we've seen the last couple of years, that we're going to go 4 and 5 deep at the wide receiver position in terms of actually seeing guys get out on the field. It's not going to be the same three guys all the time. So I think there's a spot there for some of those young guys to get some reps too.
Yeah. It's exciting to look at that receivers group. It feels like on some level they're building for the future, which is what I
Yeah,
think every Colorado fan wanted to see out of the staff, right?
yeah, and you look at that eligibility chart. It's the opposite of the O line where everybody's a senior, and on this one you got all the guys that are sort of at the back end.
Yeah, yeah,
So then the guy you really kind of the guy you want to just see who's been kind of snake bit a little bit is Omarion Miller, and every time he just gets ready to explode,
yeah.
something happens. So you'd just like to see him have that opportunity to have a great year.
What do you think Draylon Miller's ceiling is? Is he going to be an all conference guy at some point?
Oh yeah, I was just thinking about him. I was just thinking about that one play last year. He got behind the secondary and had a long touchdown pass. I think he's got everything that you need to be a top wide receiver at this level as well.
It's funny if you've watched any of these Colorado men's basketball games on ESPN Plus, you've seen their sales pitch for season tickets or just tickets in general for the 2025 season. And that play with Draylon Miller, where he just breaks through guys, is
Yeah,
a key part of that commercial. And I
yeah.
love it so much. It's like that's
What
what you need out of that position.
what needed didn't want that to play where like he broke 3 tackles and just
Yeah,
almost dragged it into
yeah,
the end zone. So
yeah,
you look at that and that's like that's a guy that not only has field awareness, but he has that desire and he has that extra
yeah,
little bit because not everybody does that. And that's a desire play more than anything else.
yeah, yeah. No, I think they're going to be just fine at the receiver position in
And, and,
Colorado at Colorado
and
in 2025.
yeah, and I think this is another position like quarterback where outside the city limits of Boulder, or including us, but people are going to look and go, well, they're going to be down at wide receiver because look at all the guys they lost, but it's not necessarily the truth. And so I think we're getting close at several positions where, they used to say certain teams said we don't rebuild, we reload, and so I think at the
Yeah,
wide receiver
yeah,
position, we have certainly reloaded. Although the only new guy really is Williams and the 3 freshmen. But I think this is a reload, and I don't know that we necessarily drop off at all, frankly.
we've talked about Josiah Williams. You don't really buy my comparison with Will Shepard, but he is a bigger receiver that's going to do some similar things. No,
Yeah, I think so, and I think he doesn't have quite the track record that Will Shepherd had at Vanderbilt when he comes here, but he's certainly done a lot of things in the short amount of time that he's been playing. So I think he's demonstrated that he can really do things at this level.
All right, tight end, Brett Bartolone's group. He was a co-offensive coordinator, I think, at Jackson State. Coached the receivers his first year in Boulder. Has been the tight ends coach last year and coming into this year. Savell Smalls returns. Sam Hart returns after coming back from an injury. Zach Atkins transfers in. You've got Corbin Lazier joining the program for the spring semester, and then Zane D'Souza, which is going to join the group later. Uh, there's at least more depth there right now than they had a year ago. And a lot less guys that are being transitioned from other positions, I guess, to play that role.
And for the first time in 2 years, we don't have a top guy coming in as a transfer that's going to leave after spring ball.
Right. Geez, that was rough. Yeah.
2 years in a row at that position. But the big question here is how is Shermer going to use the tight end position, and is he going to use the tight end position? And I think one thing I would say is that Savell Smalls was a hell of a lot better player than most people on our board think last year, and was much more impactful in our season, I think, than most people think. If you go back and there for a stretch, and he had at least one first down catch every game for quite some time, and was very impactful in the blocking in those few games when we did emphasize the running game. So I think Savell Smalls is a much better player than people think. Sam Hart had that unfortunate knee injury, but was doing some good in the blocking in the run game, and then Zach Atkins is described by most people that know about him as a dog and a guy who really brings an attitude to the field and has that more traditional tight end size. So he's a other guy I think that has something to prove too. He basically had wide receiver size coming out of high school and then put on 40 pounds of muscle, and now he wants to prove he can play the damn game at this level. So I will be very curious to see what he does. The two two big question marks to me are, what does Shermer do with this position, and what does Zach Atkins do? And, that's what I'm kind of looking for. Corbin Lazier and I think Zane D'Souza seem to me to be more developmental guys, so I would not expect a whole lot this year, but we'll see.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Zach Atkins is one of those guys. When you talk to him, it's clear he's got his priorities straight, and he is so hungry to make an impact at this level. So I'm really anxious to watch him. And on the O-line, we know that group is going to be a team effort, and it's going to be a lot of coaching for these guys. And I got a lot of guys that have played a lot of snaps at the college level, and some other younger guys that could steal that starting role. I don't know if it's too early, William, to put you on the spot. If you had to name a starting five right now, what would that look like?
Oh boy. Somebody just did that on the board, and I said it's way too early to say. I think we need to see what happens.
Sorry, but okay. So Jordan Seaton at left tackle, right?
I don't mind doing it. I mean, let's talk about these guys. Let's go position by position. Left tackle is clearly um, 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 Jordan Seaton. The big question mark to me is, can we find a backup to him, because we got very lucky last year that he didn't miss any games. We don't have a backup to him at this point, so we need to find that. We need to figure that out. Jordan Seaton, I think, Jordan Seaton comes out next year, in my view, as one of the best offensive tackles in college football. So, I think he lived up to all the hype as a freshman, and what really stood out to me is he got better every week. He got better, and by the end of the season, he was a whole different veteran player than he was at the beginning of the season. And so I think we should expect to see that improve even more this year. I think knock on wood, whatever you want to do, if Jordan Seaton stays healthy, he's playing for All-American honors as early as next year, maybe. That's how good he really is. So next to him at left guard, I think we're going to have a real battle. Tyler Brown played there a lot, but I think we saw some limitations in terms of his athleticism and explosiveness. And then you bring in, a guy like Aki Akambi, who played a lot at that position at SEC school, Texas A&M. And I've said all along that a guy who is almost a starter but not quite at a Texas A&M line maybe is an upgrade for us, because we're not there yet. So I think there'll be a lot of and then Chauncey Gooden's one of those rare freshmen that I think could step right in and play at guard. So I think that competition at that spot is going to be pretty wild. And it'll be interesting to see. I guess the first question we have to see is how these three offensive line coaches split this thing up and who does what. I tell you this: you're not going to have guys coached by Andre Giroud who are not physical and nasty. I just don't see that being a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's how he plays the game. And I think you coach the game the way you play the game. And so I think we will see a much more aggressive, in your face, get off the ball and hit people in the mouth offensive line with him involved in that. So who ends up at those spots remains to be seen. Kareem Harden played a lot of snaps at right guard. Is he going to keep that? I don't know. I guess the big question to me at right tackle, and I'm specifically avoiding center. We'll come back to that, but I want to know how Philip Houston's doing on his rehab on his leg. Because he was coming along and looking pretty decent at tackle. If he's back fully healthy and can build on what he did last year, that's a pretty solid right tackle. And then Cardi Smith is sort of the wild card as a freshman. Vertus Shelby, I don't know whether he's going to ever be a player at our level, but Cardi Smith certainly will be. And then Jay Gardenhire is sort of a project, but with his size, you never know. Maybe he steps in and picks it up right away. But
what do you think Yaya Atia fits in this offense?
I think he has as good a shot to be starting at one of those three inside positions as anybody in that group, because I think he's got real talent. He's massive and huge, and he was well coached in high school, so he's ahead of the game. And I think people write him off because he came out of a sort of an odd situation, English football or whatever. But Yaya Atia is a guy who, from what I've heard, looked really good in practice, and you see him out there snapping to Shadur a little bit. But I think Yaya Atia is a guy you keep an eye on this spring, and it would not surprise me a bit if he steals one of those starting spots. A year in the program with good coaching and a year in a weight program, and I've seen him standing next to Jordan Seaton, and they look as big as each other. So I think that's a guy to keep an eye on. And then the other guy we haven't mentioned is Zy Chrysler. I'm not sure it's Chrysler or Chrysler.
Chrysler, yeah.
Chrysler, okay. But he's another guy that comes from a top program, and has had good coaching and is a fifth-year guy and is massive. And clearly they were seeking size in the portal this year. And you look at these guys, all 330 and bigger. And so Zy Chrysler is a guy who I think could fit in at a variety of positions. And I don't know if Philip Houston will be ready to go in spring ball, but some of these guys on this list that people say are not going to be right tackle, somebody's playing that position in spring. Okay, they're not going without a right tackle, and they can't call my fat ass out there. I'm too short. But so you're going to see some of these guys play at right tackle in spring, and it'll be interesting to me to see how they do. I think it's a benefit to them that we've got a good defensive line, we got a good edge group that's going to test them in pass pro, and we'll see who can get out there and do it. So there's a lot of guys to look at that I think are very interesting. And Zach Owens is one I haven't mentioned. That's a guy that could really play either guard or tackle. And Zach Owens is a guy at 6'6" and somewhere north of 330, we'll say charitably, that could really fit in at all four spots. And if he ever matches up to his potential, he's a big time player.
Yeah.
And then Mana Taimani is another one who could play all four spots aside from center, I think. So I guess I'm sort of just going down the list of names and talking about all of
No,
them, but I don't.
that's what this is all about right now. Right
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
we're getting into spring ball, and the more open ended you can keep it, honestly, in my opinion, the better.
I guess my point is that every guy on that list you know what? Let's mention Ben Resnick because he played 2 games at right tackle as a walk on, and he's not the guy you want to start with, but you know what? In that final game of the regular season, he did a damn good job at right tackle. You know, had more struggles in the bowl game, but not a bad guy to have as maybe a third option if you got to go out down that road. But I guess my point is that every single one of these guys on this uh, eligibility chart, with the exception of Vertus Shelby and Jay Gardenhire, to me are possibilities, and even those two could surprise. So that leads me back to the center position, and the obvious competition here is going to be Cash Cleveland and Zarian McGill, and obviously we've seen Atias doing some snapping. So I think probably those are your 3 guys, and who you look at. I think for Tyler Brown, they need to leave him at that guard spot and let him try to develop at one spot and stop bouncing him to 3 different positions because he needs to develop explosiveness and power in that guard spot. And he will not be benefited, I think, by trying to play center this year. So McGill comes in, as a 5th-year senior, bigger than the centers we've had, 310-ish. So bigger than what we've had at center for the last couple of years, and certainly has shown that he can play. I like him better than the guy we had before, who we had for about 10 minutes. I can't remember, Carter, I think maybe.
Carter Edwards.
Yeah, yeah. And so I like McGill a lot. Personally, I'm a big fan of Cash Cleveland, and I know people don't agree, but show me the film, because I don't see the film of him getting his ass kicked, and I didn't see it last year because he played pretty damn well, and I can put up film to show it. You look at him in the weight room, and he's not your prototype power forward lineman. He doesn't look like it. He sometimes when I see him in the weight room, I'm like, wow, son of a bitch, man. But the bottom line to me is not how you look in the mirror, it's how you play in the damn games. And you know what? He played against Big 12 schedules for half a season and did pretty damn well. So people writing off Cash Cleveland, I think, are making a mistake, and he's a competitive kid. Um, and then I think Atia and Chauncey Gooden could be guys you look at center as well. Chauncey Gooden played a lot of center in high school. Ty Monty could play some center, I think. So it will be an interesting part of your thing that you try to do as an offensive line coach is figure out where guys best fit, and that involves, especially in spring ball, experimenting with guys at different positions and seeing what they can do with it. So I think the 3 offensive line coaches got their work cut out for them, and I'm very, very curious to see how that experiment will work out. I haven't predicted a good offensive line at CU since 2017, and I'm not going to do it this year because I'm at the skeptical, you got to show me stage of the offensive line stuff.
Fair
But
enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I will say what I've said every year is we got enough talent here to have a good offensive line. Whether we get it or not remains to be seen.
I ran into a CU fan at King Supers recently, and he recognized me, and we had a long conversation. And he talked about just being so upset over the fact that Colorado's offense was just going to suck in 2025. And I tried to talk him down off the ledge.
Oh my God.
And, Colorado averaged 33 points a game in 2024, ranked 5th in the Big 12, which was a good spot. I like, especially when you're comparing it to previous Colorado teams. But I was telling him it's going to be more of a collection.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be, and now
Collaboration.
this is the challenge that Pat Shermer has, right? Of like putting all these pieces together because the talent is there for them to have one of the best offenses in the Big 12 this season.
Yeah, for sure.
But you have a changing of the guard, I guess, and that's where some of the outside expectations are going to be very limited for this
Right.
Colorado offense going forward. But I will continue to every person that comes up to me at King Supers going forward, William. I will share the same message.
And I think that we're going to have a salty, solid defense as well, and that'll be good for them in practice to see that kind of thing. And at the very least, though, like the tackles are going to face a good pass rush in practice, and I think that people that think we're going to automatically drop off on offense are not really taking a close look at what we got because you know we could be just as good or better at most positions, quite frankly. And frankly, even quarterback, depending on what Shermer asked them to do. And again, I'm not saying any of these guys is a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders, but you put a decent quarterback in the right offensive fit for him, and they can do amazing things.
Yeah.
So uh, this is where Pat Shermer has to show whether he's a good offensive coordinator or not. And I think this is again going back to what I said at the beginning of the show was that Deion Sanders raves about Marshall Faulk being one of the greatest offensive minds he's known, and I'm very curious to see how that fits into the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. We get a lot to diagnose once we get into spring ball and kind of how this offense looks. I'm sure they're gonna keep things pretty vanilla from what they show the media, but my assumption is that this is going to be an offense that is very much more versatile than what we saw before.
Yeah, and I think there were times we saw last year that where Pat Shermer knows how to call those kinds of running plays.
I just yawned too much there, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, I'm boring you. I'm putting Adam to sleep over here. Like we're not out at the restaurant with beers and food, and so. But
I need my French onion soup from the Hungry Toad. What are we doing? 2543 Broadway Street, the Hungry Toad, your place for American football and European footy. If you have not been there, you are missing out. What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think there, William?
Well, we'll be back there next week maybe, and we'll get more.
We were planning to March 1st.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good time.
Join us there.
Yeah, but I think in terms of the offense on this team, it really comes down to I think Pat Shermer showed me he knows how to call those kinds of run plays that help an offensive line out. There's a ways to help an offensive line out, okay, as an offensive coordinator, and he needs to do more of that this year.
Yeah,
and I think we'll see that. But we may be a very different offense, but also be as very much as effective of an offense as last year. Didn't say that very well.
Well, we're struggling down the stretch here, but it's been a long day for both of us. But I am excited, William, to tackle this defense on our next show. And I got to see a couple of days ago with the Hungry Toad. Again, our faithful sponsor who we appreciate so much. Hanson Rada sat down with us. We get to share some stories with him, and such a good dude.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And just a nice little place there. Got good food. Looking forward to going back.
Yeah. When are we getting back there? March 1st, right?
Yeah.
What time? What time are we going there?
I don't think we figured that out. Maybe you just said. I think we were saying. I think I'm doing that mock trial competition. So I think we're talking about noonish or something.
Noon for a meetup? Okay. Could you do it maybe afterwards?
Well, we'll figure it out. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. I think we were talking about like after I finished in the evening. So
yeah.
Yeah. That would work for sure.
We should do that for the folks out there that want to join us. OMG, You're Dumb is a figment of most people's imagination. Maybe we can get him out there from our message board to meet folks at the Hungry Toad.
I'm happy to commit him to buying a few rounds for everybody.
I think Hanson's got us, but yeah, the other people don't show up thinking you're going to get free beers. We got a supporter sponsor here.
All right,
William. I appreciate you, and I appreciate everybody out there for tuning in.